They drained my savings, and she sent me poolside photos. Living it up. I lay on the floor, but I rose. Not to punish for pleasure, but to restore justice and unmask the lie. I went to the police, laid it all out for my lawyer, brought neighbors as witnesses. She was charged with fraud. And then I understood. A grandfather's honor isn't revenge. It's making the truth known so my grandchildren don't inherit a name stained by deceit. My name is Robert Lane, and for most of my life I trusted two things without question: the way a Levels bubble tells the truth, and the way a family name should mean something clean when spoken aloud. I have been a carpenter long enough to know that straight is not an opinion. You set a string, you tap the nail, you make your line true. I have been a husband and a father long enough to know that love is the promise to keep making the line true, even when weather and time and human weakness try to warp it. Most mornings I wake before the sun and listen to the house announce itself. Heat ticking through old vents, the refrigerator's small throat clearing, the quiet creak in the second stair I never fixed, because Nancy said it sounded like the house saying good morning. I boil water, measure oatmeal into a dented pot, and set a second mug on the counter out of habit, then put it back in the cabinet because habit is not the same as hope. My workbench is still where it has always been, under the window that faces the maple. I keep my square in my back pocket and my pencil behind my ear because my hands do not know how to be empty. Nancy has been gone 3 years. She was a small woman with a large list pinned to the pantry door. Roof in September. Tune the snowblower before Thanksgiving. Tell Hannah you love her even when she is impossible. After the funeral, I found a separate scrap in her recipe box. Just one line. Take care of them. She meant Hannah. I know that. But I hear it now as a larger instruction. Take care of the children she gave us and the name that came to us from people who worked with their hands and tried to do right. It is easier to sand oak than grief. Grief arrives at its own hours, moves into your chair, wears your slippers, speaks in your wife's voice. It makes you say yes to help. The first few months after Nancy died, help came with a familiar face and a tidy ponytail and a daughter's brisk competence. "Let me do it, Dad," Hannah said, and I let her. She stacked my mail into neat piles, set a bowl by the door for my keys, and installed an application on my phone that held all my passwords like eggs in a carton. She brought soup and called my prescription refills in before I ran out. She switched my bank statements to paperless and explained that the world had changed and it was good to keep up. Hannah is 35, our only child, and I can still see both versions of her layered together when she walks through my door. The girl who lined her crayons in a spectrum, and the woman who arranges her life for the camera first. When she was 8, she wanted to learn the names of the stars. We spread a blanket on the lawn, and she fell asleep on my shoulder while I tried to pronounce Perseus without mangling it. When she was 12, she confessed that she had written a poem on her palm for a recitation at school. I told her to scrub her hand and try again because words should live in your mouth, not your skin. She learned a different lesson: how to hide the paper better. She was a teenager of second chances. Teachers called her spirited. She could be late and talk her way back into grace. The first time I saw her lie without flinching was over a cracked cell phone screen. She said it fell. "The dog's tail," she said. There was a shoe print in the glass, pointed and angry. I remember thinking, let it go. This is not a trial. I did not want to be a judge. I wanted to be a father who believed his daughter. I believed her so many times that belief began to feel like love. You can forgive a lot under that kind of confusion. She grew into a woman who knows how to fill a room with light that is mostly angles. Her breakfasts were photographed. Her smiles were edited. She liked words like curated and brand. She worked in short bursts for places that loved her for 9 months and then did not know what to do with her when the shine rubbed off. When she had Emma and then Theo, she cried and told me that love had rearranged her molecules. I believed that too, because how could I not when she put a sleeping baby in my arms and said, "Dad, look, she has your mouth." After Nancy died, Hannah started using words about my accounts that I did not grow up with. Streamline, consolidate, optimize. She said paper is dangerous because it can be lost, and email is safer because it can be found everywhere. She held my checkbook out like it was a relic and kissed my forehead and told me I was making her life harder than it needed to be. I do not like being an obstacle. I signed where she stuck the bright flags because she was my daughter, and I was tired, and there is a special kind of fatigue that descends on a man who has buried his wife and still has to remember which drawer holds the can opener. In May, I climbed a ladder I should not have climbed, and the world went soft at the edges. Hannah drove me to urgent care like a siren in human form, scolding and loving in the same breath. She handled the forms at the intake desk with the efficiency of a person who has rehearsed it in her head. She put a clipboard in my lap. "This is just while you rest," she said, tapping where I should sign. "Temporary." Temporary is a soothing word. It sounds like a porch you build to stand on until you can pour the permanent steps. I signed because my hands were shaking, and because the nurse was waiting, and because my daughter was the one holding the pen. There were small things after that I did not want to notice. My mail came less often because there was less of it. The bank stopped sending the little white envelopes with windows, because that was more efficient, Hannah said. And anyway, I could see everything on my phone now. When a text popped up saying there had been activity on my account, I told myself it was the utility company switching to autopay, like Hannah had suggested. When she stood at my counter and used phrases like pre-probate gifts and laughed at my frown and said, "Dad, it is all legal. This is how rich people do it," I told myself that we were not rich, and maybe that was why I did not understand. I kept working a little because work steadies me. I built a birdhouse with Theo and watched his brow furrow the way mine does when a screw will not catch. I helped Emma sand a picture frame without taking over. They are both still soft clay, and I am their grandfather. I am supposed to be the press of a steady hand, the weight that leaves a mark that says, "This is how we do things in this family." If I am honest, there was a whisper under everything by then. It said, "Pay attention." It said, "Do not hand over what you are supposed to guard." It said, "If Nancy could see this, what would she ask you?" But I was lonely and proud of my daughter, and I liked being the person she came to when she needed to feel capable, even if the capability came at my expense. That sentence is ugly to write. It is uglier to admit it was true before I knew it. The photos came on a Tuesday. My phone trembled in my hand while bright blue water and someone's margarita umbrella filled the screen. My daughter, Hannah, smiling, 2 fingers raised in a victory V. Her husband was also there, and later I learned he sat in on the trust calls and helped move the first transfers. The caption, "Finally free." Living it up. Free from what? I asked myself, though the answers were already crawling out of the shadows. Bank alerts I had ignored, a temporary power of attorney she insisted I sign when my blood pressure spiked in May, the way she had begun talking about me in the past tense at barbecues. He used to fish. He used to build things, as if I was already gone. Past tense is a kind of permission, I realized. If you speak of a man as finished, you can start dividing what he has without feeling the weight of the theft. It is easier to rearrange a house if you tell yourself the owner moved out. Maybe that is how it began for her. Maybe that is how it began for me, too. My own mouth getting lazy with time, telling stories that ended with used to, letting the living parts of me grow quiet because grief is heavy and silence is easy. I rose carefully, my hip clicking like an old door. I brewed coffee I did not drink. The kettle's whistle sounded like admonishment. I pulled the folder from the hall closet, the one with every deed, pension letter, and will revision I had made since Nancy died. My hand stopped at page corners where her handwriting still lived. Remember to prune the peach tree. Take care of them. That last line had always meant Hannah, Today it meant Emma and Theo. And I stood there with the folder against my ribs and asked the question I had been skirting for months. How did we get here? Not the convenient answer, she is greedy, but the harder one that accounts for all our steps. It did not happen in a bang. It happened like a door that will not close because one hinge is just a little loose. A small permission, then another. I was tired, and she was confident. I was lonely, and she offered company wrapped in competence. I wanted to be helped by my daughter the way I had helped her. That want is not a sin, but it is soft earth where bad foundations get poured. The accounts, when I logged in, had the feel of a room robbed while you slept. Regular payments deleted and something new in their place. Transfers labeled estate consolidation, pre-probate gifts, a line item to a family trust I had never authorized. The total missing made my eyes water. My throat burned with a question too ugly to say out loud. Was I the fool who taught her that love is the same as access? I let that question sit until it stopped thrashing. I thought of every time she was small and I said, "What is mine is yours." And I meant cookies in the front seat on the way to the hardware store. I did not mean the title to the house, nor the name on the deed to my good name. Somewhere along the way, I kept offering, and she kept taking, and neither of us checked the ledger of meaning. Love is a door you open. Access is the key left in the lock. Those are not the same. What was her motivation? The picture on my screen offered one answer. A life staged to be admired. Sunlight, a glass with a salted rim, the caption that boiled down to, "Watch me." I have seen that hunger in her since she was young. The desire to be the main story, the one with better light. But there was something else under it too. Something I recognize because I have held it. Fear. Fear of scarcity, of time running out, of being left with less. Nancy died and the world caved in a little. Hannah looked at the rubble and mistook my accounts for scaffolding. If I can control Dad's money, she might have told herself, I can control the future. Control is a seductive lie. It feels like safety until the moment the bill arrives with your name on it. Another possibility twisted in me. Maybe she believed a script she wrote to keep herself clean. He would want me to have it. He is bad with details. It is only speeding up what will be mine anyway. I could hear the phrases smooth as river stones, the kind people trade in group chats where advice is really permission, and words like optimize make theft look like management. She used terms she knew would soothe me. Estate, trust, probate. Words with suits on them. If you put a tie on a trespass, some people will nod you through the door. Then I turned the blade toward myself. Why did I not fight the first time my name disappeared from an envelope? Because conflict is exhausting when you live alone. Because it felt good to be cared for, even if the care came with a ledger I could not see. Because I am a man who believes what his child says when she uses the voice she used the first time she said Dad. Because I told myself that speaking up would make me small and suspicious, and I wanted to be generous. Because I confused generosity with surrender. Should this be fought? The word fought felt wrong at first. It sounded like fists and broken plates, like the bitter stories other families tell. But what else do you call the act of standing up to a lie that walks around using your face? I thought of Emma learning long division at the table, of Theo's little hand gripping a screwdriver, of the way they look at me to understand what right looks like. If I let this slide, what lesson do I pass down? That love excuses harm? That names are for spending? That truth is a flexible thing you can heat and bend to fit a desire? I pressed my fingers to Nancy's handwriting. Take care of them. Taking care is not the same as protecting someone from consequences. Sometimes it means setting a boundary so clean it sings when you tap it, and letting the sound travel through the house. Forgiveness without a boundary is permission. Mercy without truth is just a story you tell to avoid being called cruel. I pictured the other road, the one where I swallow this, where I say nothing, where I let the money go and call it a donation to hope. In that story, Hannah learns that a door left open is an invitation to take more. In that story, Emma and Theo learned from whispers and avoided eyes that if you are fast enough with paperwork and pretty words, the world will not stop you. In that story, my name becomes a basket others carry to market and empty. In that story, I shrink in my grandchildren's memory. Number. I closed the folder and opened it again, because closing it felt too much like quitting. I traced the edges of the deeds, the places where my signature stuttered after Nancy died. I looked back at the pool photo, and the caption now read like a confession she did not know she had made. Finally free. Free of what, exactly? Free of needing my consent? Free of the inconvenience of my being alive? The thought made a cool fury rise in me, not the hot kind that burns your throat, but the steady kind that holds a string tight and draws a straight line across a board. How did it happen? Inch by inch. Not because I was unloving, but because I was unwary. Not because she is a monster, but because she is a person who chose the easier story and repeated it until it felt true. And because I helped by saying nothing, by letting my fear of losing her outweigh my duty to keep faith with the truth. So yes, it should be fought. Not with shouting, but with light, with dates and printouts and the plain, boring weight of facts, with the kind of care that says to a child, even an adult one, I will not let you walk any farther down this wrong road because I love you enough to stand in the way. With the reminder that I am not a past tense. I am here. My name is mine, and it is the one Emma and Theo will carry. If I do not hold it steady, what right do I have to ask them to? I walked the block and asked for memories I wished I did not need. Shame warmed my ears as I went door to door. Shame that I had let it come to this. Shame that I was asking neighbors to recall my private failings in public light. Mrs. Alvarez across the street pressed the porch rail with knuckles white as carved soap. She said it right here, she told me, eyes bright with anger that was partly for me and partly for the way the world treats old men. She remembered Hannah flipping through my mail saying, Dad's hopeless with this stuff, then tucking envelopes into her tote like she was saving me from myself. Eddie next door had heard her laugh into her speakerphone. He will not even notice a few zeros. He is all sentiment. He mimicked the lightness in her voice, then looked sick at his own impression. I thanked them both, wrote down names, dates, times like a student cramming for an exam where the grade is your good name, and promised I would return with typed statements for them to review before signing. I asked the mail carrier, too, Mr. Patel, if he had noticed anyone else lifting my letters. He glanced at his scanner and said quietly, Twice I rang the bell for certified mail and your daughter signed. You were home. I remember hearing your radio. I wrote that down as well. On my kitchen table I laid out an old blueprint and drew a timeline along the border with my carpenter's pencil. May. Blood pressure, clinic, temporary signatures. June. Paperless statements, new passwords I did not create. July. Transfers that looked like they were wearing suits, estate consolidation, pre-probate gifts, a family trust I had never met. I made a second list titled, The Next 72 Hours. Call bank, freeze accounts, pull last 12 months of statements, print screenshots of transfers with timestamps visible, save the pool photo and all text to a flash drive, back up the flash drive and put it in the safe, ask neighbors for written affidavits, place camera at mailbox and change the lock on the front door, call the credit bureaus to place freezes, ask Dr. Levin for a letter stating I am of sound mind and capable of managing my affairs, because I knew what story would be told about me once I stopped being easy. At the bank, Linda, the manager, took one look at my notes and called their fraud line herself. She led me into the small office with the sad plant and shut the door like she was about to tell me something I might not want to hear. Her hand rested on mine when I faltered at the language. We will flag everything, she said. We will freeze what we can. She clicked with quick, angry precision. New debit card, new online credentials, account alerts set to wake the dead. We will also unenroll any third party from your accounts and revoke that power of attorney on file, she added, turning the monitor so I could watch her remove my daughter's access. The screen reflected both of us. An old man and a woman my daughter's age, jaw set, doing the work truth demands. Before I left, she printed dispute forms in a neat packet labeled, "Steps to take after suspected elder financial abuse. File a police report today," she said, "and consider calling Adult Protective Services. They coordinate with us. I know it is your family. That is exactly why you should not do this alone." Back home, I made a binder the way I make a stair, one measured rise at a time. Tabs, timeline, bank, communications, witnesses, legal, medical. Under communications, I slipped color printouts of texts where Hannah called my checking account seed money and told me to stop worrying about paper trails. Nobody will question a grieving old man's gifts. Under Bank Y, put the flag transfers, the trust I had never authorized, Linda's notes, and the freeze confirmations from the 3 credit bureaus. Under Witnesses, I left space for statements from Mrs. Alvarez, Eddie, and Mr. Patel. I wrote a sticky note for each with the dates they had given me. I printed the pool photo on glossy paper and taped the caption beneath it like a museum placard. Finally free. Living it up. My lawyer, Mr. Crane, listened without interrupting. He is the kind of man who wears plain ties and keeps candy in a cracked blue bowl, the kind of man who makes quiet feel like ballast rather than emptiness. When I finished, he slid the bowl toward me and said the words I had been afraid to hear, but needed to. This is a case of elder financial abuse. It is also fraud. He sketched a simple path on a yellow pad. Emergency injunction to stop further transfers. Police report to start a case number. Affidavits from neighbors to fix facts in place. A forensic accountant to trace the money flow. We keep this focused, he said. Practical. You keep living your life. Let me do the paperwork. And one more thing. Do not contact your daughter about this. No texts, no calls. If she reaches out, forward it to me. We will be boring. Boring wins. Do I change the locks? I asked. Yes, he said, like he was telling me to wear a coat in a storm. And talk to your doctor about a capacity letter. It shuts down the nonsense before it starts. At the station, I told the detective what I had taught my apprentices for 40 years. Measure twice, cut once. Detective Morales had the alert eyes of someone used to listening for the thing you do not say. I laid out dates and transfers, showed the text where Hannah called my checking account seed money, and told me to stop worrying about paper trails. Nobody will question a grieving old man's gifts. His pen paused over that line, the way a level's bubble stills when it finds true. I handed him the flash drive with the screenshots and the voicemail Hannah's lawyer left about a misunderstanding. He took it with tongs of procedure, receipt, seal, case number, so no one could say later that anything had been altered. He asked for bank statements. I gave him the stack Linda printed and the dispute form she had started. He asked who else knew. I gave him the names of my neighbors and the mail carrier, and he wrote them down like he was setting anchor bolts. "What do you want, Mr. Lane?" he asked finally. "To make the truth known," I said. "So my grandchildren understand what our name means. So my daughter has a chance to turn around before the lie becomes the only road she knows." He nodded. "Then we do this by the book." What I kept to myself was the noise in my head. You raised her. You taught her to square a frame and sand the splinters from a stair rail. Where did the crooked go in? The answer came in splinters, too. It went in where I wanted to be needed so badly I mistook dependence for love. It went in where grief wore me thin and I let someone else hold my pen. It went in where she learned the world forgives a certain kind of pretty and kept testing that mercy until it turned into habit. But under the noise there was a plan, and plans are how you quiet fear. The plan was this: tighten the circle, document everything, let the professionals do their part, Protect the children from the fallout, and refuse to rewrite the story to make anyone more comfortable. Change the locks. Set up a camera on the porch and at the mailbox. Ask Dr. Levin for that capacity letter and put it behind the medical tab. Call Emma and Theo's father and say only what is necessary. The adults are handling adult things. The pancakes on Saturday still stand. Keep working a little every day so I do not become a man made only of a case number. And when the guilt rises like floodwater, read Nancy's note again. Take care of them. And remember that taking care sometimes means standing firm in a doorway and saying, "No farther." She thinks the narrative is hers, until everyone sees the full story. And I'll be glad to share it with everyone. Soon you will see the court hearing that changed our lives. But before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The injunction hit fast. Hannah's attorney called my house and left a message layered in sugar. "A misunderstanding," he said. "A family restructuring gone awry." I saved it. Mr. Crane told me not to answer. We filed the affidavits. Mrs. Alvarez wore her Sunday dress to the notarization and cried silently as she signed. Eddie cracked a joke, then wiped his eyes and signed too. But before any of that, before lawyers and stamps and words like injunction, I made one phone call. I sat at the kitchen table with the binder open to the timeline, the pool photo face down like a card I did not want to keep seeing. My pencil shook. I steadied it with my other hand and dialed. The phone rang over a backdrop of ice and laughter. When Hannah picked up, I heard music and the clink of glasses. "Dad?" "Perfect timing," she said, breathless and bright. "Can I call you later?" "We're sort of celebrating." "What are you celebrating?" I asked. I kept my voice plain, the way I talk to a board before I cut it. "New beginnings," she said. "Clean slate energy." I looked at the column of transfers, neat as fence posts. "Then listen to me for 2 minutes," I said. "Tell me what you did with the money." There was a pause, the kind where you can hear someone choosing a story. "What money?" "The transfers labeled estate consolidation. The pre-probate gifts. The family trust." I did not raise my voice. I set each term down like a tool on the bench and waited to see if she recognized them. "Dad, you are mixing up terms again," she said, slipping into the voice she uses when she wants to sound older than me. "I set up structures because you hate paperwork. I streamlined everything. It is all legal. Who authorized it?" I asked. "Not a concept. A person." "Who?" "You did," she said quickly. "You signed the, what is it, temporary power of attorney when you were sick. And anyway, it is my inheritance, Dad. I am just moving things into place." I wrote the time down and the sentence she used. "It is my inheritance." The pencil dug a groove in the paper. "That was for helping me, not replacing me," I said. "You do not get to practice my funeral while I am still making oatmeal in the morning." "Do not be dramatic," she said, and then softer, as if she remembered I have a heart that can be scared. "I am taking care of us. Taxes are easier like this. You would not understand the details." I heard her husband in the background say, "Tell him we will send the packet." And her voice came back brighter. "My advisor will email you. You will feel better once you see it laid out. I will feel better when you reverse every transfer and take your name off anything tied to mine," I said. "Today." She laughed, small and sharp. "You do not mean that." "You are grieving. Since Mom, you—" "I am grieving," I said. "And I am also reading the line where you called my checking account seed money and told someone not to worry about paper trails. I am both of those men at once. Do you understand?" Silence. Then, "You are going to make a scene over paperwork? After everything I have done for you?" "You made choices with what is not yours," I said. "We can fix it quietly if you fix it now. Otherwise, I go to the bank, then the police. I will not argue about it." Her voice dropped into a low, cold place I had not heard since she was a teenager and cornered. "If you do this, Dad, the kids and I will need space." I cannot have them around this negativity. There it was. The threat that is not a threat. The punishment wrapped in concern. I wrote that down too, because truth needs a record. I will not weaponize Emma and Theo, I said. And I will not let you weaponize them either. Saturday pancakes are still on unless their father says otherwise. So you would pick money over family, she said, and the words snapped like a rotten board underfoot. I am picking the truth, I said. That is what family stands on. She exhaled, long and theatrical, the way you do when you want someone to feel like a burden. Fine. Do whatever you think you need to do. My lawyer will call you. The line clicked dead. I set the phone down and put my hand flat on the table until the shaking stopped. My chest felt tight, not with rage, but with the grief of understanding something you had hoped was not true. I wrote one more note. She believes the story she is telling. The next morning the voicemail arrived from the attorney, sweet as frosting. A misunderstanding. A family restructuring gone awry. I saved it and slid it into the binder behind communications. Mr. Crane would later tell me not to answer, and I did not. But I was glad I had made the call before I handed anything to anyone else. It told me what I needed to know, her plan, her tone, the script she would follow if allowed. We filed the affidavits. Mrs. Alvarez changed into her Sunday dress for the notary because she said truth deserved respect. She cried without a sound while she signed, the pen making small, careful loops as if each letter might wobble under the weight. Eddie tried to lighten the air. Never thought I would be a witness in anything but a fishing contest. And then he read the paragraph again and wiped his eyes and signed too. I asked Mr. Patel if he was comfortable putting his memory into words. He nodded, squared his shoulders, and wrote a statement in tight, exact lines that looked like the roads on a map. Back at home, I changed the locks and moved the spare key from under the flower pot to the inside of my pocket, where I could feel its shape. I called Dr. Levin's office and requested a letter stating I am of sound mind. The nurse said she would have him draft it that afternoon. I placed a small camera at the mailbox and another above the porch light. Then I opened the binder and slid the day's work into the tabs. The sound of the rings closing was small and final, like a latch catching. I did not shout. I did not beg. I set the line, measured twice, and prepared to cut. The first hearing smelled like cold air and paper. Fluorescent lights hummed. The benches were the same varnished wood as church, but nobody bowed their head. I sat beside Mr. Crane with my binder on my lap, the tabs like small flags in a parade I never wanted to join. Behind me, I could hear Mrs. Alvarez's rosary clicking faintly. Eddie cleared his throat in a rhythm I knew from his truck engine. The door opened and my daughter walked in. Hannah wore a white sweater over her tan, the same tan from the pool photo that now lived behind a plastic sleeve in my binder. Her hair was pulled back to show a clean neck. She moved like a person who knows eyes will follow. A man in a trim suit walked half a step behind her, carrying a black portfolio. She did not look at me at first. She looked at the room like it was a camera and found her light. When she finally let her gaze land on mine, it had that practiced wobble at the edges. Sorrow without weight. She touched her chest. Dad. The mouth made the word. The face did not. I felt my hand try to rise of its own accord and put it back down, palm flat to the binder as if to feel the grain of something honest. Case number, the clerk read, stumbling over my last name. I corrected it softly. The judge, a woman with gray hair pulled into a clean knot, entered and set her glasses on the bench the way a careful person lays down a tool. "Good morning," she said, and the room answered. Mr. Crane stood, introduced us, and then sat. Hannah's attorney did the same. He had the voice of a commercial for a medicine with too many side effects. "We're here," he began, "because of a family misunderstanding." The judge raised a hand a quarter inch, and the attorney's mouth closed. "We're here because there is a petition and supporting documents alleging financial exploitation," she said, calm as a level finding center. We'll hear from both sides. My heart thudded in my chest like a hand knocking from inside a wall. Mr. Crane tapped the binder. Keep it simple, he whispered. Facts and dates. Let the papers speak. Hannah leaned toward her attorney and whispered something. He smiled without showing teeth. Then she did what I knew she would do. She reached for warmth. Your Honor, she said, I'm his daughter. My mother died recently. I stepped in to help. My father gets overwhelmed by details. He has been struggling. We were just trying to make things easier, consolidate accounts, prepare for the inevitable. He's very sentimental. He doesn't always... I thought of the afternoon she pressed the clipboard to my lap and said temporary. I thought of her voice on the phone. It is my inheritance. I thought of Emma's small hand in mine, sticky with syrup. Sentimental, she said, as if the only reason to object to a theft is tenderness. Mr. Crane's hand touched my sleeve, the signal we had agreed upon. I stood. My knee clicked, an old door opening. The judge's eyes were kind in the way a carpenter's are kind to a nail before the hammer falls. Mr. Lane, she said. I brought a record, I said. A simple one. I set the binder on the table where everyone could see. Timeline, transfers, texts. My voice wobbled once and then steadied, like a long board that finally lays flat after you plane it true. Hannah's attorney started to rise. The judge didn't look at him. We'll get there, she said. Mr. Lane, go on. I did not tell a story. I laid a path. May, urgent care, a signature for help while I rest. June, paperless statements I did not enroll in. July, transfers labeled estate consolidation and pre-probate gifts into a family trust I had never authorized. I slid the bank printouts forward. Linda had highlighted the lines and written human words in the margins. Who requested this? Not client. Hannah's mouth made a little O, injured and beautiful. She shook her head at the paper like it had betrayed her. My daughter said I would not notice a few zeros, I said, and the syllables felt like splinters coming out. That I am all sentiment. She told someone not to worry about paper trails. I saved that text. I placed the color printout on top. The words were so large and plain it felt indecent to look at them in public. Your Honor, Hannah's attorney slid his chair back with a small plastic squeal. Context. We'll get there, the judge said again. Her voice had the patience of someone who had built something complicated more than once. She looked down at the paper, reading slowly, and the room went quiet but for the sound of Mrs. Alvarez's breath catching 3 rows back. I felt my chest tighten. Part of me wanted to call out to Hannah with a memory that might break her posture. The night she fell asleep under a meteor shower. The way she insisted we name the stars. How she cried over a scratched windowsill because she thought she had ruined something perfect. Another part of me, older, steadier, held the line plumb. Remember why you came, I told myself. Not to make her small, to make the truth known. Mr. Crane slid another page forward. A letter from Dr. Levin, he said, stating Mr. Lane is of sound mind and capable of managing his affairs. Hannah's eyes flashed quick as a fish. Dad, she said, voice soft and scolding at once. You got the doctor involved? This is family. This is my name, I said, and your children's. She looked toward the judge and let her face fold like paper. He is grieving, she said. Since Mom died, he has been lost. I was stepping up. Maybe I moved too quickly, but I didn't steal. I did what any daughter would. There it was, the true shape of her nature, not fangs or claws, but a mirror angled to catch the best light. She was not going to admit. She was going to rename. Theft becomes stepping up. Exclusion becomes protection. Control becomes care. She expected the room to nod along because the story was prettier that way. Mr. Lane, the judge said, what do you want at this stage? Protection, I said. For the accounts. For my ability to decide where my name goes. I want the transfers stopped and reversed where they can be. I want my daughter barred from acting for me. And I want a record, so my grandchildren, when they are old enough to read it, will know what happened and what I did. Hannah's attorney found his footing. He spoke about confusion, about miscommunication, about how families do not always put things in writing. He used the word gift until it lost its meaning. He did not touch the page where my daughter told someone not to worry about paper trails. He did not say the words seed money. The judge lifted that page with 2 fingers. The paper made a dry sound. "Ms. Lane," she said, "did you send these messages?" Hannah swallowed and arranged her face into earnestness. "Out of context," she said, palm up. "We were talking about investing for my father, making his assets more productive." "What is the name of the trust you created?" the judge asked. Hannah blinked. "The family trust?" "Whose family?" the judge said, not unkindly. Hannah hesitated a beat too long. "Ours," she said. "Mine." "Beneficiaries?" "Me," she said softly. "But it was—" The judge set the page down. She did not look at me. She looked at the room like a person measuring distance. "Ms. Lane, I appreciate you wanted to help your father navigate a difficult time. That said, what I see here is movement of funds out of your father's accounts to an entity benefiting you, accompanied by communications that suggest an awareness that scrutiny was not welcome. That is not a misunderstanding." Hannah's mouth tightened. The mask slipped for a heartbeat, and I saw the small, cold engine inside. "How dare you not give me what I have decided is mine?" Her hand found her attorney's sleeve and pinched. Mr. Crane did not smile. He does not need to. He slid the affidavits forward. Mrs. Alvarez's careful script about Hannah taking my mail. Eddie's typed paragraph about the speakerphone laughter and fewer zeros. Mr. Patel's precise lines about certified envelopes signed when I was home with my radio on. The judge read them the way a carpenter tests a joint. Slow pressure. Listening for creaks. I felt my jaw loosen for the first time since I walked in. I remembered Nancy's note, "Take care of them," and felt it settle in me as an instruction, not to shield from consequence but to hold the frame square while the nails go in. Hannah tried a new angle. She turned more fully toward me and let her voice tremble. "Dad, I'm sorry you felt left out," she said. "I was doing this for us, for Emma and Theo, for our future. You know I would never hurt you." It would have been so easy to nod and fold, to say we will talk later, to take the heat out of the room at the cost of the truth. Instead, I chose the quiet sentence I had practiced alone at my kitchen table. "I love you," I said, "and I will not lie for you." Something in her eyes iced over then. No wobble, no shine. The true nature again. When charm fails, punish. She looked past me, beyond me, as if I were a lamppost. "If this continues," she told her attorney, "we will be re-evaluating contact." He gave a microscopic nod as if to say, "Noted, weapon located." "Here is what we are going to do," the judge said, and though I had asked Mr. Crane to spare me the jargon, I understood the shape of it. Protection left in place. A stop on further transfers. Documents to be produced. Another date set. Practical steps, not fireworks. No gavel slammed. The room breathed out. Mrs. Alvarez's rosary went still against the pew. Eddie put his hand briefly on my shoulder and squeezed. Hannah turned on her heel, the white sweater bright as a flag. As she passed, she stopped just long enough to whisper, almost kindly, "You didn't have to make it ugly, Dad." I watched her go and saw the way she walked, head high, pace sure, the small backward glance to see who was still watching. That was the nature people missed when they called her spirited, the belief that the story belonged to her as long as she told it first and prettiest. Outside, the air had that courthouse chill, manufactured and indifferent. Mr. Crane tucked the binder under his arm. "You did well," he said. "I did what was necessary," I answered. My hands were steady. The line was straight. I could feel it, like a string pulled tight from one truth to the next, humming under my fingers. I did not feel triumphant. I felt like a man who had set the first post on a long fence and checked it twice with his level, knowing there were miles yet to measure, and that the point was not to win against the field, but to keep the boundary clear so the children who ran there would know where safety ended and ruin began. 3 nights after the first hearing, escalation arrived not as a phone call, but as a box truck. I was sanding a frame for Emma's sketch when brakes sighed outside and a diesel engine idled like a big animal. The clock said 6:12. Evening light lay across the floorboards in long planks. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped onto the porch. Hannah stood at the curb in the same white sweater, phone already in her hand recording. Beside her was the man from court, the one with the trim suit and the portfolio. Behind them, 2 movers in gray shirts rolled a dolly down the ramp. "We're here to inventory trust assets," the suited man said, brisk and bright. He held up a paper printed with large, confident fonts. "We'll be quick." "No," I said. The word surprised me with its steadiness. "Wrong house. Wrong trust." "Dad," Hannah called as if I were across a park, "do not make this difficult. It is just furniture. Tools. We are protecting value. You will thank me later." She smiled into her phone as though she were filming a tutorial on how to care for stubborn wood. The movers reached the bottom of my steps. Something old in me misfired. An urge to apologize, to make tea, to smooth what should not be smoothed. I put my hand on the door frame and felt the grain under my palm, straight and honest. "There is an injunction," I said. "You have no authority here." "Temporary," she sang back, like the word could charm the lock. "And this is safety." "Your hip, your heart. What if you fall? We need to relocate the heavy." One mover put a boot on the first step. I moved to fill the doorway, shoulder to jam, the way you brace a warp door while somebody planes the edge. My hip protested, sharp as a nailhead. The dolly clacked against the riser. "Step back," I said. "Please." "What is the issue?" the suited man asked the air, theatrically puzzled. "We're acting under a trust instrument." "Whose trust?" I asked. "Name the beneficiary." He glanced at Hannah. She smiled wider. "My family's," she said. "Ours." Eddie's screen door banged across the street. "You heard the man?" he called, voice big as his shoulders. "Get off the steps." Hannah lowered her phone a fraction, then lifted it again. "Dad," she said, soft, urgent, the tone that used to get another cookie, another late bedtime. "Do not embarrass yourself. The kids can hear about this, or they can never need to." There it was again, the threat dressed as care. Heat climbed my neck. I imagined Emma's face if she arrived to find an empty workbench, Theo's small hand reaching for a screwdriver that was no longer there. I felt the world tilt. "Calling," I said, and I dialed. My thumb was clumsy. The suited man sighed. "Sir, let us not involve—" 911, I told the operator. "My daughter is attempting to remove property under a trust the court is reviewing. There is an injunction in place. I read the case number off the tab in my binder because I had written it there in fat pencil, anticipating this exact moment. My breath sounded too loud in my ear. The movers shifted, unsure now, the way men do when a job becomes a situation. Hannah's face sharpened. She stepped onto the walk, voice bright for her camera. "Look at this," she told whatever audience she imagined. "Elder abuse by paperwork." "He's confused. He's being manipulated. We're just trying to keep him safe." Mrs. Alvarez crossed with her rosary like a badge. "You will not take that man's tools," she said, tiny and fierce. "He built this block with those hands." The siren arrived as a distant thread that thickened into the color blue. The suited man tried a different tack. "We can leave a receipt." "You can leave," I said. 2 officers stepped out, cautious and kind. I gave them the injunction paperwork Linda had told me to carry. I gave them my driver's license, my Dr. Levin letter, my incident number from the day Hannah's lawyer called. I gave them my breath, which was uneven, and my hands, which would not stop trembling. "We are not fighting," I said, even as my shoulder hummed with the effort of standing in the doorway. "We are honoring a court order." Hannah's voice went cool. "Officer," she said, "my father is confused." "He is being coached. We have a trustee present." The officer listened, then listened to the paper. He turned to the movers. "Pack it up," he said. "No removal today." Hannah blinked and the mask slid an inch. "This is harassment," she snapped, then caught herself and folded her face back into concern. "Dad, you are forcing me to be the bad guy here." "I am asking you to tell the truth," I said. My heart banged like a loose shutter. "And to leave my house." She held my gaze long enough for me to see it. The tiny engine again, the calculation, the refusal to be small in her own story. "We are done here," she told the suited man, and to her phone she added, in a tone meant for later, "This will play well." The truck swallowed the dolly and the men, and then the street was quiet except for my breath and Eddie's low curse and Mrs. Alvarez's prayers stitched soft between us. When the blue light slid away, my knees went watery. Eddie took my elbow so I would not sit down on the porch like a man who had just learned about gravity. Inside, my hands would not open. I held my keys like nails I meant to bite. I wrote the incident number on a fresh line in the binder, lettered it neat as I could. Mr. Crane answered on the first ring. "She tried to inventory the trust," I said, "with a truck." "Good," he said, and I thought he must have misheard me. "I mean, good that you called, that we have a report." "Send me the incident number. Forward any video from your porch camera." We add it to the file. We stay boring. We let her escalation write our facts. That night I slept in pieces. The house moaned the way old houses do, and each creak had her footsteps in it. At 2, I made tea. At 3, I sat in the dark workshop and traced the profiles of my planes with one finger, naming them to slow my heart. Smoother, Jack, Block. I lined them up like soldiers and then like prayers. In the morning, there was a new email in the account Mr. Crane monitored. An urgent petition from Hannah's attorney to modify the injunction, complete with a declaration painting me as confused, manipulated, unstable. Attached were photographs of my kitchen table taken at angles that made the binder look like a mess, and a typed statement alleging I had brandished a hammer in a threatening manner at professionals attempting to assist. The photo showed my hammer on a hook where it had always hung. My stomach went cold. We filed a response with the incident report number, the body cam clip the officer provided showing me standing still, breathing hard, hands open. We included a still from my mailbox camera of Hannah opening the box with a key she was not authorized to have, taken 2 days before, when she had slipped by at dusk to check whether the bank's letters were still reaching me. I had not wanted to admit I kept replaying that clip at night, the small, neat theft of it. The second hearing carried more paper and less air. Same humming lights. Different day. Hope already bruised. Hannah arrived in careful gray, the color of neutrality. Posture taller, eyes glossed just enough to read as concern. Her lawyer opened with varnished worry about my safety and good intentions. The judge cut through it like a sharp chisel, reminding the room there was a standing order and movers at my door. Whose trust, she wanted to know, and by what authority? The lawyer's hands performed misunderstandings. The bench did not clap. Mr. Crane didn't bother with the speech. He slid the stack, incident report, capacity letter, the body cam still of me braced in my doorway, and the mailbox photo where Hannah's wrist curled at my lock like a small moon caught in black. Paper did the talking. I watched Hannah's expression flip from warmth to winter and back so fast the room felt a draft. She leaned into her favorite script, confusion, coaching, a helpless father, a dangerous stove, and I thought, not aloud, tea is not arson. The judge looked me over like a carpenter squaring a corner. I stood, named my age, my doctor's letter, my bench, my intent. Accept honest help, refuse help that steals. Across from me, Hannah reached for the familiar levers, hurt, accusation, the word cruel, while Mr. Crane added one more page, the Adult Protective Services note closing an anonymous neglect claim as unfounded. Stocked fridge, wedding ring on a chain, binder tabbed and dated, oriented to person, place, time. Not the picture she needed. For a breath the real engine showed. If charm fails, escalate. If escalation fails, smear. Then the velvet slipped back over the knuckle. The judge laid her pen down with a click that sounded final. Boundaries clarified in plain language. Injunction stays. No touching property or mail. No third-party inventory. Consequences implied. Hannah's jaw worked, and for a second she was 13 again, discovering pretty does not bend rules. The lawyer touched her sleeve. The tears did not arrive. The judge turned to me with a fraction of softness. This was not the family I wanted. I nodded anyway because want does not set the line. Action does. Between now and the next date, document, let counsel speak, keep the door locked. I would have nodded if she had told me just to breathe. That too is part of the work. Breathe, place the next board, check the string. Not because I doubt my hand, but because the line is the thing, the only thing. And children learn by looking along it to see where we are headed. That night, the house breathed and creaked around me like an old ship in chop, and I sat at the kitchen table with the binder open and 100 mean ideas marching past. Revenge is noisy. It knocks first because it wants you to hear it. I pictured the cheap versions. Blast her name across the neighborhood app. Print the pool photo and staple it to every light pole. Mail copies of the injunction to her friends with a yellow highlight over beneficiary. Me. I imagined driving to that resort from the photos and standing by the pool with a cardboard sign. This is what you bought. I imagined calling the school and telling them not to let her use my last name for pickup. Imagined telling Emma and Theo the whole thing in one bitter pour. Imagined a line I could never uncross. The trouble with revenge is it is a blade that does not care who holds it. It would cut me first. My case, my standing, my grandchildren's peace. I could see the legal damage too easily. Defamation, if I ran my mouth before the papers did. Contempt, if I broke the court's boundaries. A judge who would look at me the way a carpenter looks at a man swinging a hammer at drywall and say, "Stop making holes, we are still measuring." I let the ugly parade pass and made it name itself. "What do you want?" it asked. "To hurt back," it answered. Then something older answered from deeper in my ribs. To keep the name clean on the mail, on the school roster, on the boxes of Christmas decorations that still have Nancy's neat labels. To keep Emma and Theo from walking into rooms where people know a rumor instead of a record. To lay a line steady enough that when they look down it, they see where to put their feet. A grandfather's honor is not the swing of the hammer. It is the chalk line snapped once. True, so everyone can see it. So I changed the question. Not, how do I make her feel what I feel? But, how do I make the truth visible without breaking what I am trying to build? I started with the quiet, solid things. I called Linda at the bank and asked if she would stand with me for a talk at the senior center on how to protect your name. No names mentioned, just facts. She said yes before I finished the sentence. I called Detective Morales and asked if he would bring pamphlets on elder fraud resources. He said he would, and that he would wear plain clothes so it stayed neighborly. I booked the community room for a Tuesday and hand-wrote a flyer that said, "Keep your name, a conversation about protecting what you've built." I signed it small at the bottom, hosted by Robert Lane, carpenter, I printed a single sheet titled Facts, Not Stories, and slid it into a clear sleeve inside the binder and into another by the front door like a building permit. It said, "There is a court order. Date. Transfers out of my accounts are under review. I am of sound mind. Doctor's letter on file. Questions go to my counsel." It did not call anyone a thief. It did not ask anyone to take sides. It gave dates. It gave language a reasonable person could carry home without needing to embellish it for flavor. I drafted a calm message to the family group chat where holidays used to get organized. I am in a legal process regarding my accounts. A judge has ordered protections. I love my daughter. I will not discuss details here. If you hear rumors, ask me for the record, not the story. If you need documents, I will provide them. I pressed send and put the phone face down and walked the yard until my heart stopped acting like it had been chased. I wrote letters to Emma and Theo, 2 envelopes each, one to open now, one when they are 18. The now letters were short. Pancakes are still on. You did not cause any of this. I love you more than a straight line. The later letters were longer. I told them what a ledger is. I told them what Nancy meant by take care of them. I told them when I stood up and what I said when I did. I folded those letters and put them in the safe with the recipe cards in the ring. On Sunday, I stood in the fellowship hall after church with a plate of potato salad and let people come to me. When the brave ones asked, I did not give them the juicy parts. I gave them the docket number and the sentence the judge had used, boundaries clarified, and watched their shoulders settle because clarity is contagious. I thanked them for looking out for me. I told them there would be a talk on Tuesday about protecting your accounts. Mrs. Alvarez squeezed my arm. Eddie slapped my back too hard and then apologized. It felt like building scaffolding with people who know what a fall looks like. I called the school counselor, not to poison the well, but to set the record in case a rumor arrived with drop-off. I said, "I am Emma and Theo's grandfather. There is a court matter. I am safe to see them. I can provide a doctor's letter if you need it." She thanked me, and I could hear the way she stacked the facts on a shelf where they would be easy to find later. I took a small step into light without naming her. I wrote an op-ed for the local paper, signed with my name, about how help can become control if you do not check your line, about how grief makes you hand over your pen, about what to ask your bank, your lawyer, your doctor. I included a line that said, "If you love your people, do not give them the burden of your silence. Tell them where the deeds are. Tell them where the wills are. Tell them where the danger is." The editor called to verify my name. I said it twice, slow, like a craftsman, stamping it into the back of a drawer he built. I took copies of the injunction and the APS closure letter and the capacity note and put them in a manila envelope labeled Truth, Public. I gave one to the pastor, one to the senior center director, one to my own front hall table. If someone came to me with stories, I would hand them paper. If my daughter or her attorney tried to argue with faces, I would answer with dates. I also did nothing, and that was part of the work. I did not drive to her apartment. I did not post at midnight. I did not answer provocations. When the part of me that wanted a big swing lit up, I walked into the shop and planed a board until thin curls fell like shavings of anger. Grain tells you the truth if you put your hands on it and shut up long enough to feel it. On Tuesday, 21 people came to the senior center. Linda stood next to me and talked about alerts and beneficiaries like she was teaching a class of apprentices. Detective Morales said, "Document, then tell one person who can act." I told the room, "This is not about being tough. It is about being clear." Afterward, a man with hands like mine said, "My nephew has my password. I am changing it." And I watched the way his face lifted when he said it. That felt like honor, not the kind that beats its chest, but the kind that keeps a promise. The next hearing moved like a nail gun, quick, loud enough to be felt, over before anyone could pretend not to hear. Public knowledge did a quiet job on the room before we arrived. The senior center talk, the op-ed with my name on it, the whispered chain of neighbors telling neighbors what a docket number meant. By that morning, the lie had fewer places to land. Linda from the bank sat in the second row with a folder on her lap. Detective Morales stood in the back, arms crossed, expression neutral as a level. Mrs. Alvarez and Eddie were there again, Sunday clothes on a weekday. Hannah came in smaller than before, gray suit careful, lips pressed into a straight line that wanted to look like resolve. Her attorney shuffled a thicker stack, but the energy had changed. No one in the benches leaned toward the performance. They leaned toward the paper. The judge didn't waste words. Prior violation noted. Incident report acknowledged. Adult Protective Services closure read into the record. The body cam still glanced at. The mailbox photo glanced at. The doctor's letter set on top like a weight. The trust with the wrong beneficiary, named and dissolved. Transfers, frozen and ordered reversed where possible. My accounts, restored to me. A permanent order barring Hannah from touching my finances, my mail, my tools, any authority linked to my name. Referral made for further review outside this courtroom's walls. No speeches, no theater, just plain carpentry. Measurements, cuts, joints that fit. Hannah's eyes went glassy, then hard. For a heartbeat the mask fell and the small engine showed again. The demand to own the story, the refusal to be seen as anything but the hero of it. Then she signed the stipulated order with a shaking hand, and the pen made a scratch that sounded to me like a latch catching. I did not look at her when it ended. I looked at the judge, who looked back the way a person does when they have finished something necessary and not enjoyed it. Then the humming lights kept humming, and the room exhaled, and that was it. No applause, no gavel like a movie, just a door opening and each of us choosing how to walk through it. Outside, Mr. Crane said, "It's done." And I knew he meant this chapter, not the whole book. He shook my hand the way men do who respect the work. Linda hugged me, quick and fierce, and whispered, "Keep your alerts on." Detective Morales nodded once, professional and human. Mrs. Alvarez pressed a rosary into my palm and called me hee-ho. Eddie said, "Pancakes on Saturday, right?" And the question untied a knot under my ribs. That night the house felt taller, not bigger, truer. I did not pace. I washed dishes. I put the binder on the shelf next to Nancy's recipe box and the folder marked Will's, and for the first time since May, I did not have to touch it to remind myself I was not crazy. By early September, the DA filed a fraud charge against Hannah. I let the paperwork move while I kept my promises to the kids. It would have been easy to feel triumphant, to rehearse revenge speeches I had never delivered, to wander the neighborhood with paper copies and a highlighter. But I had done the loud thing already. What stayed with me was the quiet, the way the truth, once spoken and recorded, just sits where it belongs and does its work. I had been tempted by the noisy path, the one with stapled posters and shouted names. I could see now how that road would have bent back on me, put me in front of a different bench for different reasons. The law can hurt you if you swing wild. My honor would not be measured in scars I gave back, but in the line I kept and the name I left steady. A grandfather's honor is not revenge. It is making the truth known, so your grandchildren do not inherit a name stained by deceit. I had said it to myself. Now I had lived it out. On Saturday, the doorbell rang twice in the pattern we made up when Emma was 3. 2 sets of shoes clattered down my hall. Theo stood in the kitchen doorway with a screwdriver in his fist like a talisman. "Can we build today?" he said, already halfway to the workbench. "We can," I said. "Pancakes first." At the table, syrup pooled like amber around their forks. Emma watched me the way older children do when they are deciding what kind of adult you are. "Is everything okay now?" she asked, tone careful. "Everything is true now," I said. "That makes it okay." I did not mention court, injunctions, trust names, referrals. I mentioned pancakes and the birdhouse and the way sun finds the grain when you sand long enough. There are adult things the adults are still fixing, I added, and none of them are your fault. You are safe here. You are loved here. She held my gaze, then nodded. Theo drummed a spoon and sang, "Birdhouse, birdhouse," until Emma laughed and the sound bounced off the old tile like light off water. We built all afternoon. Theo learned to pre-drill because splitting a board teaches you about impatience. Emma stained the roof a deep, steady brown and wrote our names inside where only we would know they were there. When the last screw seated with that clean final sound, Theo grinned like he had invented alignment. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder the way her mother once did under a different sky. Before they left, I slipped a plain envelope into Emma's backpack, the now letter I had written, the one that says you did not cause any of this and pancakes are still on. I kept the future letters in the safe with Nancy's note. Some truths belong to later. Some truths are earned by time. After they were gone, I walked the yard at dusk and checked the locks out of habit more than fear. The mailbox camera blinked its small, steady light. In the workshop, I hung the hammer back on its hook and wiped the bench clean. The house creaked in the good way, the way that says a structure is settling into itself. I stood in the doorway, the threshold that had tried to be a battleground and ended up being a boundary, and thought about what would be left when I am gone. A few pieces of furniture with my pencil marks hidden underneath, a recipe card with stains that look like maps, a name on a mailbox that means, "To two kids I love beyond measure." Not perfection, but a promise. When something goes crooked, we do not lie about it. We measure twice. We say what is true. We set the line and keep it, so the ones who come after us know where to put their feet. Faced with the same choice, truth or revenge, would you do what I did? Share your take in the comments so we can learn from it.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.